بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأسكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. Today we continue from page 26 of Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghuddah rahimahullah ta'ala's book Islamic Matters. Bismillah.
It is incorrect for you to expect your voice to be known to the person you are visiting, since voices and tones are diminutive and can be confusing. Also, not every person in the hall you are visiting will be able to recognize your voice. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam discouraged the one knocking at the door from saying its name, since it doesn't give up the meaning. Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim reported that Inaudib Hikmah said, I came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and knocked on his door. He asked, who is it? I answered, it's me. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam disapprovingly said, it is me, it is me. It is for this reason that the Sahaba used to mention their names whenever they were asked who is it.
So here we see the author, he teaches us how to introduce ourselves when you go somewhere. So if you make a phone call to someone, or if you're at someone's door and you are asked, who is it? Now, the responsibility that you have is to identify yourself as that person would know you. So for example, the worst case scenario would be that someone just says, it's somebody, or guess who it is. And anyone that's been in situations where someone said that to you, it's extremely annoying because that person assumes that you may know them, even though in that moment you may have forgotten them. And secondly, that person may also assume that you're down for a moment of humor and laughter while you might just be in the middle of a lot of stuff. So the best thing for you to do before you get involved with humor and laughter and joking and pranking or anything else is introduce yourself and ask that person if they have time for you. If you have permission to come in, if that person can accommodate, do you have a few minutes? And then from there you can work your humor into the conversation if that's necessary. Now, the purpose behind knocking on the door and seeking permission is so that the person on the other side can choose whether they are ready to receive you or not. And one of the things that they need is your identity. They need ta'rif. They need to know who's on the other side. Sometimes people may know you by one name and you may go by another name. So when you do introduce yourself, you should go by the name that people recognize you as. Someone may know you as, for example, Imam so-and-so, or principal so-and-so, because you're the principal of their school or the imam of their school. Now, you may use another name that your parents gave you at birth, but that's not the name they know you by. So when you introduce yourself, they may think, oh, it's someone random that I don't know, it's some Zubair. But when they open the door, it's Shaykh Fulan, some great Shaykh. And to open up the door and receive some random Zubair wasn't a big deal, but if the imam is over, they probably would have wanted to change their clothes or dress themselves in a different way. So that's why whenever you do introduce yourself, you should go out of your way to identify yourself so that the person on the other side knows who it is. When I would call my teachers, we would always introduce ourselves before anything. We'd say, Hussain Kamani from America. Because he knew so many Hussains. So when you would say your first name, you would then say your last name, and then you would further identify from America, because he had so many students from across the world. By identifying further the one from America, he would know, okay, I know who's calling me in this moment. So, for example, Shahir Sayyid, you would say from Carrollton. Now that person knows, okay, this person lives in Carrollton. His name is Shahir Sayyid. Now I know who's reaching out. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he emphasized this. Jabir radiallahu anh shares a narration here. After his father passed away in the battle of Uhud, he came to meet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam asked who it was, he said, Ana, it's me. And to that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Ana, like he was almost unhappy with the way that he introduced himself. That what good does that do? How do I know who it is if you just say me? Go ahead. Now, the interesting thing about this narration, this is a part of a longer narration, a very long narration of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu and his interaction with Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam on this one special night that he had. The reason why the author brings this narration is because Abu Dharr's name was not Abu Dharr, but that's how he introduced himself because that's what people recognized him by. His actual name was Jundub ibn Junada, Jundub the son of Junada. But in that moment when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked who it is, rather than giving his technical name that's on a birth certificate, he introduces himself by the name that he would be recognized by. And he says, Ha an Abu Dharr, I am Abu Dharr Ghifari. Yes.
I came to see Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He was taking a bath with his daughter, bathing himself in the was swimming. He asked, who is it? I replied, I am anything, something to him. When we visited a friend of yours, we pointed out his name, and he apologizes for not being able to receive it. Accept his apology. His personal affairs and the condition of his house is best known to him. It is possible that something may have come up, or that his personal circumstances do not allow him to receive you at the moment. He has the right to ask to be excused.
He has the right to ask to be excused. That's that individual's right. They have the right not to accept you into their home. They have the right not to take your phone call because there could be a lot of things going on that you are absolutely unaware of. The best thing you can do is not make everything about yourself. Create an excuse for that person. Be respectful of their privacy. Head back home and visit another day. Yes, go ahead.
Therefore, they deserve to be excused. Used to say, not all people can disclose their reason.
This is a profound statement of Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi. Not everyone can disclose their reasons. And this teaches us a great adab in life, a great lesson. When you interact with people, don't ask about private matters. Do you guys understand that? If someone's hospitalized, they say, my mom is sick, my dad is sick, la samhallah. You shouldn't ask what happened. You should just give your du'as. Now, if that person wishes to share with you, or if you know that person would appreciate that level of conversation, that if you were to ask them, it would make them happy, then go ahead and ask. But otherwise, be mindful. Someone says, my relative has cancer. What kind of cancer? Lung cancer. Oh, he was a smoker. Now you made that person expose themselves. Don't do that. Right? Let people live their private lives. You must always learn to respect the privacy of people. Yes.
Mentioning the etiquette of visiting and seeking permission. If you are asked to go back, that makes for greater period. Many hosts become compelled and disturbed not want to attend to under their circumstance, and they resort to lying. Not only do their children wear these bad manners, but such behavior may lead to ill feeling and hatred in the heart.
So this point that he mentions here, that when it came to visiting, our pious predecessors used to say to their hosts, perhaps you are preoccupied and cannot attend us. This is a higher form of etiquette, where not only do you not demand that person to submit a reason for not receiving you, rather you go out of your way and create an excuse on their behalf. Someone, you were expecting to have lunch with someone and that person shows up, and when it comes time to pay, you see them being reluctant and you just create an excuse on their behalf. It's okay, bro. I know. Trust me, I forget my wallet too. And just go ahead and make the payment. Rather than making that person feel shameful, making that person look down, making them feel, that they were a letdown in that moment, you stand up for other people. This is such a prophetic thing to do. Because most people, what they'll do is that when they see someone is in a bad position, someone is about to be humiliated, if someone has done themselves wrong, we just wait, sit back, and watch them unravel. I want to see how this ends. This is going to be really good. But there are other people who will say, there's no need for you to lose your honor. It's okay. And they'll stand up for their khasam, for the one that is possibly even in opposition to them in that moment, and they will defend them. I saw this in the example of the scholars, many of them, that they would be in debate with someone, and when they realized that they were in the process of destroying that individual, they would almost back out of the conversation themselves to safeguard that person's dignity, that there's no longer a need for us to go any further. You thoroughly understand that you've been destroyed and battered in this conversation. That's that. Let me withdraw from the conversation to uphold your dignity. This is for the honor of another Muslim. That you don't ever want to see their honor and their dignity, their izzah unravel. You convey your point, you do it respectfully, and you walk away. Unfortunately, when I was younger, I had a lot of hot blood running through my veins. So I used to love debating and arguing. And there was a pleasure that was experienced in those moments when you had just battered the pulp out of someone in an argument. And you had captured them in a box through logical equations that they could no longer escape from. You had tied them up in a straight suit. And in that moment, there was a pleasure that the nafs experienced. And this feels great to be triumphant. But then you begin to understand, and you begin to realize that that all came at a cost. A cost of what? First of all, a lot of pride and arrogance in yourself. But secondly, what about that person's honor and dignity? Is everything in the world about just being right and wrong, or is there not respect for other human beings? Right? Sometimes I see this with people when it comes to interacting with their own parents. Because they realize that since I'm young and my brain is sharp and my skills of logic are very sharp, winning a debate against my parents shouldn't be too difficult. This is the mind of the young person. So when they get into an argument with their parents, they'll provide two dalils, two good arguments, theological reasonings, and then before you know it, the parent is just looking and they have nothing left to say. And in moments like that, sometimes the parents will actually say to their child, "Chalo badi khushi hui. I'm very happy to see that I raised you for 20 years so you could shut your own parent up. You must feel good of yourself. You must feel really good of yourself right now that I raised you for 20 years just so you can humiliate me like this." One father once said that to his child, that I raised you for 25 years just so you can humiliate me like this. If you knew that I was wrong, did you really have to go this far? Couldn't you have ended this conversation earlier? Couldn't you have just bowed out of the conversation? But there's a joy that the human being feels, is unraveling someone else's honor and leaving them on the ground. But Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi teaches us something else, and these ulama here, that perhaps you are occupied and you cannot attend us. We don't even need to go there. I'll just back out of this one. It's not like we're going to have pizza anyway. Yesterday's pizza, that moment is gone. So now that that moment has passed, let's just end this conversation with dignity, and let's not end on bad blood. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he cites the ayah, "In qila lakum irji'u farji'u huwa azka lakum." If you are told to return, then just return. That's the best thing for your spirituality. Don't investigate and probe any further. Yes. There's one more thing here actually that he says in this passage. He says, many hosts become compelled and disturbed by the visit of someone whom they do not want to attend to under the circumstances and may resort to lying. Because when you tell this person that I need you to give up your reason, why didn't you open the door? One of two things are going to happen. Either they're going to speak the truth or they're going to lie. If they're going to speak the truth, now you're making them expose something that they had chosen to keep a secret, which means most likely they're going to humiliate themselves in that moment. They're going to end up sharing something that they didn't want to share. They didn't feel comfortable sharing with you. You're not at that point in their life where they can open up these matters to you. Or secondly, they may lie because they are keen on maintaining their dignity, so now they're going to lie just to cover up. So you did both. The best thing was for you to just back off. And then he says here, the Quranic etiquette provides a better alternative. And what's the Quranic etiquette here? Farji'u. When you are not granted permission, just go back. End this conversation there. Don't push it any further. Bismillah.
Control your eyes. When seeking permission to enter the home of someone, avoid glancing at his instrument or limit privacy. This is shameful and detrimental. Sayyidina Sa'ad ibn Ubada said, a man came to seek permission to enter the door of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam while facing the door. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, turn this way. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam then turned him away and ordered him to move further away from the door, saying, the act of seeking permission has actually been ordained to prevent intrusion.
Thawban.
A person is not allowed to look inside a house before being permitted. If he does so, looks inside without being permitted, it is as though he has entered, intruded, which is forbidden. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah reports that Rasulullah said, once the gaze enters the home, there remains no use for permission thereafter. Ahmad ibn Asad
Tajibi.
stated that Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab said, whoever fills his eyes with the sight of the interior of a house before being permitted is a wrongdoer. Sayyidina Sahih ibn Sa'ad said that a man threw a hole into the room of Rasulullah while he was scratching his head with a soft ball.
Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had this contraption. It was a stick with a claw at the end. You see these at Walmart now. It's these long sticks that have a little claw at the end. He would use it to scratch the back of his head, or use it to scratch the back of his the back where he couldn't reach. So he was scratching himself inside his home, and someone was peeping through. Yes. So in this brief chapter, the author talks about controlling your eyes. And the message is quite clear. We go to someone's home and seek permission so that we can enter into their private area. But if you have entered their private area prior to seeking permission, even though you haven't entered physically, but you've entered otherwise, what was the point of even seeking permission? Sometimes you might enter into someone's home by putting your ear against their window or their door, and you're listening to what's happening on the other side. That's not permitted in Islam. Similarly, you're peeking into someone's home, whether it's you standing at the door and looking at the glass frame and trying to look through the door, that's not jaiz. You have to look away. As Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned one companion's face away from the door and said, face another direction while you're waiting. Similarly, sometimes people keep an eye on the windows. Oh, the light's on, someone's definitely in there. Or I heard the toilet flush. Wallah, someone's in there. Someone's definitely there. Open the door up. I can hear someone talking behind the door. If you're doing these things, then what's the point of asking permission? What kind of dignity do you have? What kind of respect do you have of that other person's privacy? So here, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to the companions, the purpose of seeking permission is so that you can look inside and get access to their private quarters. But if you've done that already, there really isn't a point in seeking permission. Now, this becomes common and very important on a few different levels. The first thing is, when you're walking outside or driving outside on a dark night and people have their windows open and their lights on and they're watching TV, it may be very tempting to look inside people's homes. Never do it. Never, ever do it. This becomes more important when people live in close proximity to one another. Some of us, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us homes. We have front yards and backyards, so there's some safety buffered into the layout of the land. But if you're living in close proximity apartments, if you're living in townhomes that are built up next to one another, it becomes even more important that you don't look around during those hours of the night, because someone may leave their window open. Yes, they're doing wrong, but it's further a crime for you to look through their window too. If you know that someone is having a private conversation in their house and you can hear it through the wall, do your best to stop listening. Don't be a part of that. Now, if we offer each other the rights that are due, these rights of privacy, it protects relationships and gives people a sense of safety, security. But the world that we live in today, it's been kind of occupied and taken over by such just immorality that people, they look through other people's homes to look into their private matters and they spy on them. And you wonder to yourself, what iman is in your heart? This is not what you're supposed to be. People, they hack each other's devices and they peep around in there and look around in there. These things are very dark, but unfortunately, it's real. Where individuals don't understand that just because someone's phone is there doesn't mean you can pick it up. You definitely should not be looking at the pictures that are in that phone. If someone shows you a picture on their phone, you shouldn't even scroll left or right. You should ask that person permission. May I scroll? Or can you scroll for me? Because the next picture there might be a private family picture. And this is actually very common. People usually show vacation pictures that, oh, look, I was traveling here. And when you take vacation pictures, you take 2 pictures of the scenery around you, and the 3 pictures before and after are of just family or people that you're with. And those pictures aren't for you. So you have to be mindful of controlling your eyes. Don't reach into people's private areas. Don't investigate them. Don't look. Don't spy. And I was avoiding using this word, but I think I might go ahead and use it. Our society has become very perverted. And it's as if decency is leaving. And it becomes that much more important for us to be protective of ourselves, first and foremost. And secondly, be mindful of other people. Wherever you are, control your eyes. Yes.
Lower your eyes and you should take off your shoes at an appropriate spot and set them in an appropriate fashion.
So when you enter into a home, into someone else's home specifically, when entering the house of your host, you're entering into someone else's home, you should assume and understand, in particular if it's a Muslim's home, that they pray here. And when people pray in their homes, they don't appreciate others walking around with shoes on. In the house of a Muslim, being permitted to walk around with your shoes on is usually the exclusion. That's okay. People can choose that, by the way. You might tell the guests that come inside, keep your shoes on. We prefer it that way. That's great. But otherwise, you should assume that when you enter into someone's home, the first thing you need to do is take your shoes off. Now, when you do take your shoes off, the author makes a good point here. He says you should take your shoes off at an appropriate spot and set them in an orderly fashion. Look around first and ask yourself, where is the best place for me to place these shoes? In life, whenever you do anything, what you need to ask yourself is, what's the most optimal way for me to do this thing? What's the best way that I can do it? This is what we call in Arabic hikmah. What's the word? Hikmah. Hikmah, if you look at the definition of it in Arabic, the ulama, they say, وَضُعُ الشَّيْء فِي مَحَلِّهِ. To place something in its proper place. Okay, for example, the brother who placed this water flask on the table before the class started. Now, he had to make a decision. There were multiple decisions. Decision number one, should I put water in here or another drink? Another decision, how much should I fill it? Another decision, should it be cold water or room temperature water? Another decision they had to make was, should I keep the cap on or should I take the cap off? What will be easiest for that person? Another decision they had to make was, where on the table should I place it? They could have placed the same bottle on this side. That wouldn't have been hikmah, because no Muslim drinks with their left hand. Rather, the hikmah was to place it on the right side of the table, therefore it was placed there. It could have been placed right in front of me, in frame, therefore blocking the view of those that are joining us online, but the individual chose to put it here out of sight. It could have also been in a way where it blocked one of you guys, but it was placed in a way where it doesn't block anyone's view. When I look at the placement of this bottle, and I've been thinking about this from the beginning of class, the person who placed it here did it with wisdom. This is hikmah. Now, some of you may think that's overthinking it, but when a Muslim interacts with something, what they do is they look around and they assess first. What's the best way for me to do this thing? When I enter into someone's home, personally, the one thing I always tell my children is the default is to take our shoes off outside, not inside. Because when we bring our shoes inside someone's home, there is dirt and filth coming in with it. Unless they grant us permission, we shouldn't harm them in any way by bringing any dirt in their home. This becomes that much more important if your footwear has dirt on it, like extra caked in with mud. Let's say you decided to walk over their grass on the way into their front door. Or if you just walk through a lot of snow or rainwater and it's wet, then you definitely should not be taking your shoes inside, right? Out of consideration for that person. So when you do enter into the home, you should take a moment to just assess what's going on. Where is the best place for me to take my shoes off? And then secondly, leave them in an orderly manner. Line them up properly. They say that you can tell so much about a community just by looking at how they rack their shoes in the masjid. It tells you what kind of adab they have. You know, it tells you how they respect one another. But then when you walk into a place and the shoes are all over the place and everything's a big mess, it also tells you that there's some development that still is required here. There's still some development required here. Yes, go ahead. So the first part was all in relation to being considerate of taking your shoes off, where and whatnot. Now the second part, he adds in the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also taught us how to take our shoes off. إذا انتعل أحدكم فليبدأ باليمنى وإذا نزع وفي رواية فليبدأ باليمين وإذا نزع فليبدأ بالشمال. That when one of you puts his footwear on, he should start with the right. And when you take it off, then start with the left. So keep that etiquette in mind and try to act upon that sunnah, that teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. One time, I was in madrasa, and they had public bathrooms because there was a large congregation of people that would attend the madrasa, so there would be one area, like a bathroom area. I was once waiting in line to use the washroom, and in front of me was one of my teachers. The stall opened up and he went to the stall, and I always thought to myself, I wonder how he's going to put his shoes on. And I said always, and the reason why I said always is because this was something that I struggled with. In our madrasa, they had the slippers in the bathroom and they would never be taken out of the bathroom. So the slippers always remained in the bathroom. And the reason why I wondered how he would do this was because when you enter into the bathroom, you're supposed to enter with your left foot, but when you put your footwear on, you're supposed to put the right one on first. So I stood there in line. I said, I want to see how this works. Let's see which sunnah he sacrifices. Because he has to sacrifice one of the two. If you're going to enter into the bathroom with the left foot, then you can't put the right shoe on first or slipper. And if you're going to enter with the right foot, then you've just sacrificed the sunnah of entering the bathroom with the left foot. So I thought to myself, let me see which one he sacrifices. And to my amazement, he did not sacrifice any of them. He entered into the left foot, but rather than putting that footwear on, he stepped on that slipper. And then brought his right foot in and put that foot on, that slipper on, and then put the left slipper on. So rather than putting the left slipper on first, he just stepped on top of the slipper, right? Therefore, he acted upon the sunnah of entering with the left foot. And then when it came to putting slippers on, he then put the right foot on and then the left foot. And then I thought to myself, see, these people, they have the sunnah on their mind in every moment of their life. How can we accommodate? That same Shaykh of ours, he was very particular about following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Very particular. And it's known from the riwayat that when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would mount his animal, he would throw his right leg over first. Now in America, it's easy because for those of us that are driving, we enter from the left side of the car, so your right foot enters first, so you get a chance to act upon that sunnah. But in England, they enter the car from which side? The right side, because obviously driving on the wrong side of the road. The ajib thing is that we're probably the ones that are driving on the wrong side of the road. But we're American, we're right. Of course they're wrong. So he had this big book that he used to teach us, I believe it was Jalalain. So he had a big copy of Jalalain that was the size of his torso. And he was about to enter into his car. And I thought to myself, okay, got him on this one for sure. And he did something really fascinating. I thought he was going to snap his spine in the process, but he had really perfected this. He opened the car, he held the handle on the inside of the car, you know where people have little handles there? He held that. He put his right foot in and then slid the left foot in from behind. And I thought to myself, this man is very particular. For him, every small and big sunnah is important because it's an imitation of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he was very keen on preserving the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through his practice. One of my teachers once, I recall, I took him to, he came to our masjid, so this was in Chicago when I was imam there. He said, I need to do wudu, so I took him to the bathroom where the wudu area was. And he very carefully looked at the wudu area, then went outside the wudu area and came back, and then he selected which stall he was going to do his wudu at. And I asked him, I said, Shaykh, why did you do that? He said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would face towards the qibla while doing wudu. So I just wanted to make sure which of these faucets face the qibla so I can get that barakah as well. Why not take the barakah if it's available, if it's present, if I can get that reward too? These people cared about these things. It mattered to them. My mother, rahimahullah, I remember my father was buying a home. So he asked my mother, what do you want in the home? So she said to my father, I don't care about any of the features of the home. The only thing that matters is my range, my stove should face the qibla. Because I like to face the qibla when I cook food. I think it adds more barakah, inshallah. It's a good thing. It's a good practice at that. So my father, he then accommodated that for now. Obviously, facing the qibla and cooking is not from the sunnah per se. But it's a thought. That's what I'm trying to put here. Just a thought. That's a point I'm trying to bring here. It's a thought. That there were these people that when they would cook, they would do wudu before cooking for barakah. They would start with Bismillah, keep themselves engaged. How many of you can attest to this, that you saw your mothers and your grandmothers and ammas who would listen to Quran while they were cooking? They would do some dhikr of Allah while they were cooking just to attract more barakah because they understood this is what was going to be consumed by the bodies of the people in the homes. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us how what you consume impacts you spiritually. Therefore, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in one hadith, لا يدخل الجنة جسد غذي بالحرام. That body which was nourished by haram will not enter the paradise. لا يدخل الجنة جسد. What is it? غذي بالحرام. غذاء means nourishment. غذي بالحرام, which was nourished through haram. May Allah protect us. So here he brings that prophetic example. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when you put on your shoes, begin with the right, and when removing them, begin with the left, so that the right shoe is the first to be put on and the last to be taken off. Yes. Now you've entered into the house, taken your shoes off. Where do you sit now? How do you sit? Again, you can tell Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghuddah is all about that hikmah. He's about that wisdom. Because for the average person, you just take a seat. You walk into the room, you scan all the seats, look for the most comfortable one, and then you just lock yourself down and enjoy the rest of the evening, and don't get up from that seat no matter how many elderly people walk inside or how many sick people walk inside, because you got dibs on the seat. You got there first. Here, Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghuddah rahimahullah ta'ala teaches us some adab. Let's read it. First thing, if your host tells you to sit somewhere, then what should you do? Just sit down. Don't argue, don't protest to it, because you may think of something, but the host is thinking of something else. Maybe they want you to sit on that seat specifically so that you won't have to look at the rest of the home, and the people who are working in the back of the home or just going back and forward don't have to worry about you looking at them. Maybe they don't want you facing a direction of the home that they did not get the chance to clean enough for a guest to see. And one thing is having your house clean. The other thing is having it presentable, right? Presentable for people that are visiting. No one has their house presentable all day. And if you have kids, you definitely don't. Some of the young people here are like, oh, my house is presentable 24 hours. It's always ready. It's picture perfect. I can see Tarablusi saying that. But for those of you who have children, you agree with me. Your house is not always ready to be presented. I need at least a 24-hour notice. Then I have to investigate and make sure there aren't random hijab pins lying around and there aren't broken things hidden somewhere. And I have to pull out the wrappers and make sure there isn't chocolate stuck to the sofa. And then you have to, there's a lot of preparation. And most of it isn't for us. It's for your safety. You guys understand? The host is being considerate of the guest. It's for your safety. So when the host tells you to sit somewhere, just sit down there, because they're being considerate of the people in the home and they may guide you accordingly. Yes.
Therefore, it is important to adhere to the suggestion of your host and accept his order treatment. Other believers in the has reported in that one of the honored companions, Sayyidina converted to Islam and came to see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam honored him by seating him on a cushion while he himself sat on the floor. Sayyidina Ali says, then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took me along, and upon reaching his house, he took a leather cushion filled with the palm fiber and threw it on the floor. Sit on this, he said. No, you sit on it, I answered. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam insisted. No, you. So I sat on it while the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sat on the floor.
The ruling that we always teach in this regard is the famous statement, al-amru fawqa al-adab. That the command of the host supersedes any adab that you may have in your mind, that you might think, no, I don't want to be disrespectful. But if the command comes that, no, I want you to sit here, al-amru fawqa al-adab, then at that point you have to put all of your etiquettes aside because you've been told to do something. So listen to the command that's coming in your direction. Yes. Kharija ibn Zayd.
Saying, I am content as you are. Do not even see me as another man down in the corner in my home and do not prepare for you what I prepare for myself, since you deserve to be honored. Sit where you are, asked the sick. Don't sit on the host's seat unless he asks you to. For our Master sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no guest should leave the host in salah while in the home of the host. Neither should we sit without consent at the designated seat of the host.
So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches us two things: that if the host has a particular seat they sit on, if they have a particular seat on the table they sit on, a particular sofa they sit on, don't sit on there without their permission or unless they instruct you to do so. This is much more important for children because they don't understand the idea of a designated seat for a host, right? They should be told that you don't sit down unless you've been asked to sit down. One thing that I tell my children when we go somewhere is that you should be the last people to sit down. First, stand in the corner and make sure all the adults get their seats. Make sure all the ulama are sitting down. And once everyone is seated, if there's a place for you to sit, then you can sit. Otherwise, sit in the corner of the room on the ground. If there is nothing there, then find somewhere else in the house to go and sit. But you must always be respectful to the elders. Give them priority, right? They are senior, therefore there should be adab for them. There should be extra consideration for them, that they are given priority. When a person walks into a room and they see that a child is sitting and the adults are standing, is that a delightful scene? No, you think, what's going on here? Did the parents of this child not teach them any adab? And when you stand up from your seat, let's say you sat down first and an elderly person came later on, when you stand up from your seat and give them your seat, do you decrease in respect or increase in respect? You increase. The people in the room will look at that person and say that person's parents taught them well. Otherwise, in today's world, nobody gets up because there is no adab. There are no manners. There are no etiquettes for any of this stuff. And similarly, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches us the etiquette of leading salah in someone's home. The host has first rights to leading salah. Now, they can choose to forego that right. They can tell someone else, I'd like for you to lead, and then we go back to that thing that we said, al-amru fawq al-adab. Now that they've told you to lead, you need to go forward and lead. Or they may say, I'd like for you to sit at the head of the table because therefore more guests can talk to you and you can easily speak to everyone. Okay, then go ahead and sit there. But otherwise, be mindful of not stepping on someone else's private area, their personal area, and give them the respect that they deserve in their home. So with that, we'll conclude here. And we'll continue in our next class. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us tawfiq to amal upon what we learn. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.